I got a question from Birmingham, and it sounds a little something like this. If Georgia beats Alabama Saturday, is it seen as a changing of the guard? Does it elevate Kirby past Nick Saban? Those of you who are familiar with the way I view this stuff know my answers are always sort of boring on this front because I subscribe to Meemaw's protocol and methodology when it comes to judging this sort of thing. And her protocol was the honey over water, and that is, many people are going to get tired of me explaining this. But once more, for the newbies, Meemaw would like you to take a drop of water and a drop of honey, put it on the plate, and then turn the plate sideways and watch the water just goes off immediately. But the honey just slowly creeps. And that's how I believe in judging football coaches. Football coaches don't get good or bad overnight. So similarly, if you got a guy like Nick Saban who has won championships at multiple places now, but he came to Alabama, that was a place, by the way, where it had started to become believed that you could just never win again. Like Alabama was Nebraska. Folks were talking about Bama like they talk about Nebraska now. Yeah, they won once upon a time, but it can't happen anymore. Well, of course, we know most of the time that's misguided. What cannot happen versus what is not happening are two different things. So anyway, Saban comes to Alabama, resurrects a sleeping giant, and he's won championships over 3 different decades now, and he's rewritten the record books in college football and built up just insane amounts of competitive equity, as I would probably call it. I say like to call it, but I've never used that phrase before. And the reason I mention that is you don't just top that over the span of a few years. Kirby's 1-4 against him. This would make him 2-4. Kirby Smart is a phenomenal coach. He's built a model program. That's just the starting point. Then you've got to sustain it for a decade and a half. To me, this is how I think about it. You can think about it however you'd like. But I think about it as it would be impossible for Kirby to have done this. And win again this year and win again next year, it would be an historical feat. Even Nick Saban hadn't won 3 in a row. But bypassing is impossible. Someone who's built greatness over a decade and a half will not be bypassed, in my mind, over the span of 3 years or 4 years or something like that. So it's no knock on Kirby. No one could do that. Nick Saban could be cloned as a younger version of himself and go take over Georgia or take over Florida and start the run that is similar to what he's doing at Bama. It would take Saban Part B a long time to top what the original has done. So I never think about it like that, but there is so much significance. When these two play, there's so much significance because neither one of them want to admit it's the premier rivalry in the SEC, and I think it is. I'm not going to, when I say rivalry, understand, I'm not talking about historically. I'm talking about because both of them are on the top of the sport and they happen to reside in the same conference, they clash every now and then. It's not like Ohio State, Michigan, for example. And it's different than Alabama, Auburn, or Georgia, Florida. But Georgia, Alabama is the premier rivalry in the SEC right now. And anyone who argues that is arguing probably for a different reason, and they're arguing from a historical context, or they define rivalry differently. Jesse, what was the stat we had the other night? The SEC championship game has featured at least one of these two teams every year since when? Last 10 years, last decade. So the SEC's gone through one of these two teams every year. Most of the time it's been one of these two teams. If you go back the last 8 years, only one season has seen someone other than these two teams win the SEC, and that took Joe Burrow and LSU to do that. So, how they really feel about each other is rarely admitted out loud. You'll never hear Saban or Smart or any of their coaches or any of their recruiting staffers or player personnel types admit it publicly, but if you can get them off the record, you know that it's a constant looking over the shoulder and they're looking at each other. Or it's a constant looking in the mirror, and they're basically looking at each other. Both of them will swear their way is better. Both of them will swear that their culture is superior. Both of them will swear by their player development. Both of them will swear by their recruiting apparatus, or apparati, plural of apparatus. Talent, not only acquisition, but evaluation practices. Both of them will swear by it. Strength and conditioning, nutrition, they'll both swear by it. And anytime they're in a conversation, they know, inevitably, the other team's going to come up. And if it doesn't come up, they'll probably voluntarily bring it up. They'll never admit that, because that makes you sound paranoid. But I'm telling you, because I know both programs intimately and live amongst both fan bases and grew up on the border of these two states, that is the state of affairs between Alabama and Georgia. And here's the other beautiful part about it. Every coach in America has an opinion. And a lot of them have come from these programs. A lot of them have been a grad assistant, or maybe you were a recruiting assistant, or maybe you worked in graphics. There are so many great people in our industry that were pumped out of Athens and Tuscaloosa. And so you've got those people spread about the country, but also you just got observers. I mean, the head coach at Portland State, I don't even know the name of right now. He's got an opinion on this game. The tight ends coach at Virginia Tech has an opinion on this game. And it's crazy because there are very few games outside of a national championship situation that bring the sport to a halt. Georgia-Bama brings the sport to a halt. Everybody's watching. I wish you could be privy to the group texts with other coaches or other player personnel types or other recruiting directors around the country, and it's like they've all got their take on it, and they will all draw conclusions off of it. There are a lot of programs that work downstream of Georgia or Bama. In other words, whichever program they perceive to be on top of the SEC or on top of college football at the time, they're kind of taking cues from. Well, when they play each other, there is no better metric. There's no better barometer. If Georgia wins 33-10, if Bama wins 33-10, if there's a decisive outcome, you start to look over at Tuscaloosa or Athens and say, well, they just did this to them. Let's do more of what they're doing. Let's go meet with their staff over the spring. Let's hire 2 of their marketing people. It's wild. It is wild. Everyone's got an opinion on it. So it's significant, and you will be told that this is another game, and you will be told nameless, faceless opponent. It is ultra intense. It's ultra personal. It is the national championship game for these two. Because let me tell you something else they believe, and they'll also never admit for sake of respecting the opponent. They believe whoever wins this game is going to win it all. Most of the people in the South believe whoever wins this game is going to win it all. Odds makers may very well believe that. Here's the thing with Bama. Georgia, you can buy that. With Bama, you may not buy that. But with Bama, you got to understand something. If you get them in the playoff, you give them a few weeks to get healthy, and you got the best big game coach in the country against Michigan or Oregon or FSU or whoever the case may be. I'd like their odds. So in Tuscaloosa, they look at it and say, if anyone's going to keep them from winning the title, it's got to be us. Because if they get past us, they're going to win it all. And in Athens, they think the exact same thing. If Bama gets past us, they're going to win it all. And there is nothing in the world that they want less than to watch the other one win a championship. The head coaches feel that way. The assistants feel that way. It's in some cases very antagonistic, but in other cases, it's the height of professional and competitive respect. So you want to know why I make it a priority to be on the sideline every time they play? Those are some reasons why I want to be there. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a phenomenal environment in Atlanta Saturday. Happy to be there.